Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to the Good News Show. This is the Wednesday Superchain Spotlight edition of the Good News Show. And if this is your first time joining the show, a big welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And today I am flying solo. I do not have my lovely co-host in residence, Mr. Brock McBlockchain, joining us, aka Breadcat. So today we are going to do a little bit of a summary of the news of what's happening in the Superchain ecosystem, also some news from Farcaster as well. And then in about 30 minutes time, fingers crossed, we have Benji from Optimism joining us. I do believe he's joining us. I have an RSVP, but I have not heard from him. So fingers crossed, we are going to have Benji. But if you are watching this today and you have either a drop or you are building something on the Superchain or you are getting ready and gearing up for Onchain Summer with Base and you want to come swing by and tell us what you're doing, then shoot us a DM or jump in the comments and let me know, and I will send you the link to come join the show. And we can get you up here live and we can talk about what you have going on and what you're building in the Superchain. Okay, so a little bit of a kind of update in terms of where we're at with this show. This is now, I believe, episode 7 of this edition of the Good News Show. And for those who perhaps don't know about the Good News Show or kind of about what we've been building, I figured it was a good time to just have a little bit of a reset, talk to you about where we've been, where we're at right now with the show, and where we're planning to head in the future. So first of all, hello. Good morning. I hope you have some strong coffee in your cup this morning. If you are watching on Unlonely, yay for decentralized social media, and a big shout out to our friends over there for helping to make this broadcast possible. Definitely drop us a hello in the chat on Unlonely, or if you're watching on Twitter, maybe you're watching on Twitch, maybe you're watching on YouTube, all of the places. But give me a hello in the comments. Let me know where you're joining from. Let me know where you are at in terms of your level of understanding and use of the Superchain. Superchain being Base, Optimism, Zora, and a variety of other things that are being built on there as well. So definitely drop me a hello in the comments. We would love to see and hear from you. All right, so in terms of the show, the Good News Show was something that I started back in November of 2022. And the reason that I started the show was because there was just so much FUD at the time on the timeline. It was right around the time of the FTX crisis. And so a lot of friends were losing money. A lot of people were feeling trepidatious, rightfully so, about the space and just really, putting a lot of negativity out there. And there was also a lot of negativity on the timeline about crypto. And there still is, let's be honest. Rad, who I host the Monday Good News Show with, just shared an observation that she made after watching the Tom Brady roast on Netflix. Let me know if you've seen that. It was pretty wild. And that was that we're still in media just fudding on crypto hard, right? And I think we need a narrative shift if we are to onboard the next billion users into this ecosystem. And so back in November 2022, as the timeline is just kind of filled with all of this FUD, I was like, I'm doing one of two things here. I'm either leaving the space and never looking back, and I'm cashing out all of my wallets, or I'm going to really lean in hard to the idea of optimism. I don't mean the chain. I mean just the concept of optimism and the utopia potentially that we have here with new technology. And so, because I kind of looked at it from this standpoint, and it was something that I experienced in my journey here in Web3, and that was I came into the space as a woman, surprise, and was in these rooms with a bunch of voices that didn't sound like mine, right? With a bunch of voices that were predominantly male. And I found it hard to be heard. And I found it hard to have opportunities to actually speak and have my point valued and respected. And I was going to leave because I was like, screw this. There's no place for me here. This is a boys club. This is a crypto bro club. This is DeFi. I don't know if I want to be a part of this ecosystem. but something that happened to me really inspired me to continue doing the work that I'm doing with Good News. And that was and again, I was on my way out the door. I was like, I am done with Web3. But I happened to go into a Twitter space that was hosted by the amazing Laurie Grace. And if you don't know Laurie Grace, you should absolutely go follow her. She is a phenomenal storm chaser photographer. I live vicariously through Laurie's photographs because she photographs up close these amazing tropical storms, twisters. I'm probably using all the wrong language, but you get the drift. Crazy wild storms. She gets in the middle of them and she creates these fantastic, amazing photographs. We have to get Laurie on the Superchain. That's a good reminder. I'm going to make it my mission to onboard Laurie into the Superchain. If you're watching this, Laurie, we're going to make it happen. But Laurie was hosting this space, and I came into the space, and she made me feel so welcome. She opened up the stage, and she was letting people in. She was just open to hearing diverse voices. And I was like, okay, this is how you do it. This is a little corner of the internet. This is a little corner of Web3 where I feel valued, I feel seen, and I feel appreciated. And so having that experience with Laurie, and I will kind of extend that to say that during that experience, I was so inspired by Laurie that I went and created a piece inspired by her, a piece of art. I minted that piece of art, and Laurie actually bought it, which was like, what? Not only is this woman creating a warm, safe space for all people in crypto Twitter, this is essentially what it was, but she's also putting her money where her mouth is, and she's supporting other creators. And so inspired by that, and then also just kind of realizing that a lot of women and a lot of marginalized people in Web3 were feeling the same way, I initially started a space called Women in Web3. And we did that for probably about 6 to 7 months. We did that every Thursday, and we welcomed so many incredible creators. Sadly, a lot of them who were no longer in the space because they got tired of the BS that was going on, and also probably got burnt with something like the FTX crisis. But we then went on to do a show daily. So right after the FTX crisis started, I actually reached out to Maya from Time, and I said, I want to start a show called The Good News Show. Is that super cheesy, or should I just do it? And she said, you should do it. And so we started a daily show, and every morning we would meet at 11 o'clock, Monday through Friday. It was a grind. And sometimes we'd have 100 people in the room, and sometimes we'd have 2 people in the room, with one of them being me, right? But we were relentless. We showed up, and we made sure that every day we were finding something positive in the Web3 ecosystem that we could share with people, because I didn't want somebody coming here who has incredible potential, who is a tastemaker, a change maker, a visionary, a brilliant brained tech genius, and having a negative experience and seeing the FUD and saying, peace, I'm out of here. This place is not for me. So we wanted to be kind of that anchor in the wild storm that was crypto Twitter, where people could go and feel a sense of optimism and feel a sense of inclusion and feel that they could be heard and seen. And so Monday through Friday, we did that for about 7 to 8 months. And then in January 2023, we teamed up with Timepieces, which is Time Inc.'s Web3 initiative. And we began hosting the show thanks to Miss Maya Drazen. Amazing partnership with Time. And we started doing that every single Monday. And we added into our program, so in addition to gathering good news from Web3 and good news from the market, we also started to platform and spotlight artists and spotlight innovators and people who are making real significant impact in the space, including nonprofits, including for-profits. And we've just made space and time for those that we believe in and those that we feel are doing something that's not extractive to this ecosystem, because I think we've all had our fair share of experience of extractive parties, whether that's being rugged, whether that's, people posting projects that are just garbage and then ending up losing funds, or whether that's just bad actors in Web3. And so that's a little context, kind of brings us up to where we are today. We, over the last, probably since the last 12 months or so, really upped our game, and we've done over 300 interviews at this point. We've interviewed the likes of Sasha Stiles, we've had Brian Brinkman, we've had Dave Krugman, anybody who's making moves in Web3 in the art space, or whether they're building new technology, they've come through and they've been on the show. So where do we go next? Well, this is kind of part one, I guess, of our plan to build forward, and that is, making a push to really give accessible knowledge to people who perhaps are still in that early curve of learning about Web3. But we really believe in what we're seeing with the Superchain, especially the Base ecosystem. And if you don't know about Base, I really recommend that you go and watch my interview last week with Jesse Pollock. Amazing things being built. Surprisingly, Base has only been around since August of last year, which is incredible considering the amount of projects it's launched, the amount of activity we've seen on chain, but just a real visionary human being who is building for the future with creators in mind. And Base is, of course, a blockchain backed by Coinbase. So definitely go check that out. It is Mind Your Biz, and I'm going to put it in the comments so you can go check out that interview that I did. But also, we are thinking more broadly about how we become a platform for positive storytelling and how we bring that on chain. So you're going to see some things happening over the next couple of months where we're going to try and bring, hopefully, our entire, I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but our entire back catalog is the goal of all those interviews and all those Medium articles that we've produced over the last couple of years, and put them in one place where you can actually consume them. So if you're ever having a bad day and you think that crypto Twitter is not where you want to be, or you're feeling deflated by anything you see in the space, you can actually go to this portal, you can go to this resource, and you can access all of these amazing things. So I'm going to hit pause for 1 second because I want to say GM to Mr. Ron Smith, who I see in the audience giving me a wave. So hi, Ron. GM, glad that you're here. And a big shout out to anybody else who's joining us. I see some folks, a mysterious Anon joining us on the Unlonely channel. Good morning, Anon. Good morning, Anons. Good morning, Crypto Twitter. Good morning, GM. So we will have Benji in about 15 minutes, but giving you the good news kind of lowdown was a goal this morning. So hopefully that gives you a little taste of what we have coming. Definitely keep your eye on the Good News account. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel because there will be more info coming there. But let's get to some headlines from around the Superchain. So let's talk a little bit about Farcaster. There was quite a lot of news this morning. Not even this morning, but the last week or so. And I think the first thing that we should talk about is decentralized channels on Farcaster. So our first story is about decentralization, which is, of course, the heart of blockchain technology. And the latest proposal or announcement, should we say, from Farcaster, from Dan, is that the introduction of decentralized channels, basically to simplify the protocol, allowing for permissionless creation and management of channels. And this proposal focuses on making the process more straightforward while enabling experimentation and quick implementation at the channel level. Channels, if you're not familiar with them, they are like communities on Farcaster, so little hubs, little corners of the internet or corners on chain where you can build your community. And at the moment, it costs around I think it's 300 warps at the moment, which is about $5 US to set up a channel. And you can, you can obviously post, you can update your audience, you can let people know what's going on within your community. Very niche-based channels. You can also token gate those channels at the moment, where you can just allow folks to access if they have a token that's related to you or to your business. But what is coming is a little bit more flexibility in terms of building these channels off of Warpcast, right? So building it as an independent protocol. So channels will be created and managed on chain, much like flexible identities, which are FIDSs, with all profiles, rules, and settings stored within the actual protocol itself. So users can follow the channels with their follower data. So unlike what we see with, say, Instagram or Facebook or any of the social media apps where we're building equity, where we're building audience, we can't then take those followers with us, right? And I talk about this a lot in my classes with artists, and that is, this idea of building business on social media has been amazing, right? It's opened up a lot of possibility for a lot of creators to have that direct B2C or B2C communication with collectors. It's allowed people to do commerce without any kind of intermediary or any third parties, right? So not losing any commission. But the sacrifice of social media is that we have put all our eggs in one basket. So, for example, if you've built on Instagram and you've built a collector base that buys from you on Instagram, and you've put a lot of social media time, hours, effort, etc., into this one platform, which a lot of people have, me included, you have no grounds for anything should that platform tomorrow choose to pull the plug, right? And this is where decentralized social is really, really interesting, because say you've built all that kind of equity and all of those followers and all of that social capital in that one space, and tomorrow Instagram shuts down. Not going to happen, but it could get weird, right? They could decide to restrict your access. They could restrict your DMs. Your DMs could be a paid service. You could no longer see who's following you, who's liking you. They could token gate in terms of charging you a fee to see if somebody's making an inquiry. It could become whatever they want it to become, because we all sign terms of service when we join an Instagram, a Facebook, a Pinterest, whatever, that says they can basically do whatever they want, right? It's their platform. The gold and the kind of dynamite of what we're seeing with Warpcast, with applications like Dracula, all of these incredible products and protocols that are being built on top of Farcaster, is the ability to be able to take ownership of your followers and take them with you from application to application. So for those who are not in this world, like, imagine being able to say, okay, I have 10,000 followers on Instagram, but I can go to TikTok and those 10,000 followers come with me. It's bringing all of the things together, but more importantly, it's you owning that data. It's you owning that information. None of those companies can then come along tomorrow and say, I'm going to just rug you and you can no longer see who's following you. So a ton of value there, and very excited to see kind of this extension with channels, because I think it really opens up possibility for further commerce, for people to be able to bring advertisers into individual channels. And just a little bit more on this. So the phased approach targets the complete decentralization of the protocol by May 2024. So essentially, by the end of this month, Warpcast is aiming to, or Farcaster is aiming to remove dependencies on the platform Warpcast. So it is an ambitious plan, but it is something that we feel could significantly enhance the flexibility and security of managing decentralized communities. So essentially, how I'm interpreting that is, if you have, for example, if we set up the Good News channel, which we have done through Warpcast, and then something happens to Warpcast, we then lose all of that data, all of that analytics, all of that community engagement, all of those conversations, any assets that were shared in that channel. Whereas now, we have a separate protocol, which I imagine is going to be called channels or something fun, where we can then access that independently of Warpcast. So very exciting. If you have any thoughts on that, definitely let me know in the comments. And I would love to know, for anybody who is kind of not fully in to this ecosystem, are you finding that these little bite-sized shows on Superchain are helpful? Are you getting some insight? We don't have our techie guru with us this week, unfortunately, which is Mr. Brock. Usually I can kind of delve into these topics a little and talk about it from a user perspective, because I am using these technologies, but anything below the surface, any nuance, I'm not your girl. That is Mr. Brock. And he will be back with us next week, which I'm very happy about, because I don't love doing these shows solo. But here we go. We are here and we're committed. And, anything that I've done in Web3, anything that I've done in business, I commit to showing up. I commit to being consistent. And so that's why we're here. So hopefully I can give you some value, but definitely check out channels. Definitely keep your ear to the ground with what's happening at Farcaster. And lots of exciting things. Speaking of Farcaster, there was an announcement yesterday that Farcaster just raised $150 million. So Farcaster, a blockchain-based social media startup, which has raised $150 million in a fundraising round that was led by Paradigm, with participation from A16Z. A16Z, that's really hard to say, is of course backed by Chris Dixon. Chris Dixon is a part of that team. Chris Dixon wrote probably one of the best books on Web3. If you have not read it, go get it. It's called Read, Write, Own. In fact, we might do a giveaway here on the show next week for that book, because it is one of the best accounts and takes on where we're heading in the future. So very exciting. So A16Z and Paradigm also involved in that fundraising round. And let's see what else. So Farcaster, of course, is known for its innovative frames feature, which also allows applications to run within posts, making user experience seamless by eliminating the need to navigate to external sites. Operating on the Ethereum blockchain and OP mainnet in the Optimism Layer 2 ecosystem. Farcaster transitioned to a permissionless model in October, leading to substantial growth. And the platform has seen 350,000 paid signups and a 50x increase in network activity. I think it's a 5,000x increase in activity, but don't quote me. I think what we should do is we should get Prof. Werder and Adrian to give comments on Farcaster, because they do have their GM Farcaster show. And I don't want to even pretend to be an expert on this ecosystem. I am not. I am a user, I am an observer, and I am just super inspired by those who continue to show up to teach and lead and learn in this space. So shout out to the ladies from GM Farcaster. But 150 million fundraise is huge news. And I think if you are not yet on Farcaster, then you should really be thinking about it. Big shout out to Superama. Oh my goodness, you're so sweet. She said, you're doing great. I feel like I'm fumbling through this show today. So I apologize, but I appreciate the shout out and I appreciate the love. But yes, definitely look at Farcaster. Let me know in the comments section if you are, in fact, on Farcaster. Give us your info so we can give you a follow. And do go follow the Good News Show channel, because in addition to this show, the Superchain Spotlight, we are also uploading content from the Monday Good News shows with timepieces, and also content from my new show, which is Mind Your Biz. If you did not see last week's episode of Mind Your Biz with Jesse Pollock, definitely give it a check out. Go check that out. Go watch it. It was pretty awesome. We captured the interview of Farcon. And today we actually just rolled out a new episode with Alice Della Hunt, who is the founder, CEO of Psyche, who are just leading the way in digital fashion. And it's a fascinating conversation, because for me, that's always been a hard one to explain, especially to non-Web3 lay folks, is the very concept of digital fashion. But what Alice is doing is really cool. We are gonna mint that episode shortly as well. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But I will also drop that in the comments. So what else? What else do we have going on in the ecosystem? Well, this is not Superchain related, but we cannot let this day pass without mentioning that it is officially Bitcoin Pizza Day. Today is the day. And if you're wondering what the heck is Bitcoin Pizza Day, it is a day that is celebrated annually on May 22nd. And this day commemorates a historic transaction that actually happened in 2010, when a man, an anonymous man, bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. Holy smokes, shall we do the math of what those pizza slices would be worth? Let's do it. Let's do it right now. Calculator. Let's see. So Bitcoin right now, I see those pizza symbols. $70,000 is what Bitcoin's at right now. So times 10,000. I don't even know what that number is. 700 gazillion trillion billion dollars for one slice of pizza. So we celebrate this day. It is a historic day. And the transaction symbolized that Bitcoin's early adoption was happening, and it was obviously at a much lesser value than it sits at today, which is $70,000. And today we are highlighting the exponential growth of Bitcoin since the pizza transaction. And it just underscores Bitcoin's acceptance as a real world asset and its potential as long-term investment. So yeah, amazing. Some awesome things that happened in the kind of Bitcoin ecosystem as well. So January 15th, I believe, was the was it January 15th or January 5th? I don't know, but it was the anniversary. It was the 15-year anniversary of the first Bitcoin transaction. And myself and my business partners, Ben and Sigrid from Audio Galleries, actually did a drop on ordinals with Nyla Hayes. Now, if you don't know who Nyla Hayes is, she's an amazing artist who she actually was at the time, she was a 12-year-old artist, and she became Time's first artist in residence. And she did a couple of collections, most notably the Long Neckies collection, which was ETH mainnet drop. And she just rose to stardom. She was represented by United Talent. She had all these amazing opportunities. And it's just been so inspiring to kind of watch her growth as a creator, but also watch how she was able to just impact and bring joy to a lot of people in the Web3 ecosystem. That was not D-Jenny, right? It was not D-Jenny. It was beautiful art by this wonderful young woman who was just kind of finding her own creatively. And what was even more special about the drop that we did with Nyla was when we were preparing to put out our marketing around this new drop that she was doing on ordinals, we discovered that Nyla's birthday was actually just a couple of days after the first Bitcoin transaction. So in kind of this full circle moment, we had this 15-year-old human being and this 15-year-old cryptocurrency, this digital technology, this digital currency, both coming of age, right? Because Bitcoin obviously went through the halving event right around that time as well. So that was a really cool moment. And just, interesting to kind of see how digital currency is going to impact that generation. Because, for somebody like Nyla, who is now coming into her teens, Bitcoin has existed for her entire life. So it's really exciting. And if you haven't seen that drop, definitely go check it out. I can also share a link to that in the comment section. So we're coming up on 11:30. Hopefully we have our special guest joining us, Mr. Benji. But let's see, do we have time for one more story? All right, so while we wait for Benji, also just kind of breaking news yesterday was ETH's ETF potential. So finally, we turn our attention to ETH. ETH has seen more than a 20% surge in price over the last 2 days, fueled by renewed optimism about the SEC's potential of a potential to approve a spot ETH ETF. That's a lot of letters. That is one heck of an acronym. So this positive sentiment marks a shift from previous consensus and is seen as a major boost for crypto investors. The decision on various ETH ETF applications is expected this week. And obviously you can keep up to date with that in the news. And this approval could break the current stagnation in the crypto market, which has seen Bitcoin trading between 60 to 70,000 for weeks. And analysts suggest that an ETH ETF could lead to significant market movements and renewed investor interest. And as we are looking at this today, 20% rise in the last 48 hours. Wow, as of right this second, ETH is sitting at 3,749. Will we see it break 400 today? Is it going to 4,000 today? Is it going to happen? I am rooting for ETH to 10K. But enough about ETH. Let's welcome our special guest. We've got Mr. Benji in the house. GM.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you're here, and thank you for making time. I know you have been a busy dude, and you are very much in demand in this community. So I appreciate you jumping in.
Appreciate you. Love the hat.
Thanks. We're going higher. We are going higher.
Yeah.
So Benji, just for those who don't know you, can you just start by giving an intro to you and also a brief overview of what optimism is and kind of the primary goals of what you're building over there?
Yeah, so Benji, I have been in crypto for a couple of years now. Initially got in through various different means. And then once I kind of like began working, I joined as an associate product manager at Coinbase. Did a lot of international homepage stuff and like growth there for a bit, and then left to go and then join Optimism. Optimism is a layer 2 scaling collective. Essentially, we're all trying to advance Ethereum together. You can imagine it as like if blockchains are cities, Ethereum is New York. New York gets crowded, and Optimism and L2s are the skyscrapers that make it livable, basically, so people can actually do stuff on top of it. And Optimism is a collective that develops a bunch of these. So we built this thing called the OP Stack. OP Mainnet is our first one that we launched, which is like a canonical initial rollup, one of the first ones in the space. And since then, the OP Stack has kind of been used by various different chains, many of which that you know already. And we have kind of worked with some of these chains to build what we call the Superchain. The Superchain is basically a consortium of various different chains built on the OP Stack, contributing revenue to the Optimism Collective, which is the governance system, to essentially with the end goal of scaling Ethereum together and scaling crypto together and bringing the whole world on chain. We're lucky to be like working with various different teams from across the board, like Zora, like Redstone, like Base, kind of building this whole, like expanding the pie together. And it's been very, very excited to see. So my role within that is essentially in the growth team. I work with a lot of chains to help them kind of get their ecosystem up and running. So I'm kind of like embedded across various chains that are launching and are about to launch, which has been a really, really exciting job. Previously, I've been at Optimism for about 2 years, held different roles within DevRel, did a lot of NFTs related stuff, helped run We Love the Art, which is a large art contest where we gave about 1.2 million OP to 184 artists across the space. That's like our first kind of step to show that like we are here to show up for the creative community. And I think you'll see a lot more of that emerge throughout the Superchain, like in general, as more and more teams join and add their own initiatives. Very excited for Onchain Summer, which is happening this summer, as well as various different initiatives in relation to that. But yeah, that's a little bit on me. Happy to kind of talk about other things. Personally, I'm a like big Farcaster maxi. I believe in the idea of like connecting humans behind the numbers as much as possible. After all, like definitely believe blockchains are just attribution elements, and the main thing we're attributing is human behavior, and as such connecting humans together and like enabling new discovery mechanisms for people both financially and socially is very powerful and kind of help steward a decentralized future where humans can kind of like connect and learn and grow and spread value amongst each other. So that's a little bit on me.
It's amazing. And first of all, I just want to say that like our audience is kind of split because we are broadcasting this on Lonely, thanks to the amazing team over there. So we are live on Farcaster, but also we're on X, we're on Twitch, we're on YouTube, and we're on all of the things that are Web 2. And a lot of the audience that I personally have is creators, because I spent the last 2 decades of my career working with artists, and I started a company called Conception Arts that championed over 8,000 artists in 14 cities around the US. The reason I'm saying that is, as an observer and somebody who's been pretty immersed in the creative community for almost 2 decades, artists do not get funded. Mm-hmm. It is near on impossible for artists to get grants. Like, I have been on grant boards, I have sat and given grants as part of my business, but I can tell you the amount of funding that was geared and pushed towards the creative community here is unprecedented. And you mentioned 1 million OP. What is that in technically in USD? That's
not able to explain any of that side. I think it's generally, though, like what we kind of see it as is would love to answer like the question of like how and why we chose to do this as well. So effectively, like, as I want to go back to like the blockchain as cities analogy, like the world is going more and more digital. That's happening. Everyone's on their phones a lot more. People live their entire lives on basically like, and a lot of their information that like, and their perception of the world is kind of driven by the phone, right? Like what they kind of see online. we end up in scary chambers where a lot of the phone screen time is like goes towards places where there's algorithms controlling our attention, where algorithms have their own incentives to sell ads, so they want to maximize and send you polarizing content, causes a divide in the social sphere, and all of that's happening. And like the kind of one of the promises, and this is my opinion, is like one of the promises of decentralization, although it started off with finance, is actually the ability to kind of decentralize who accesses / how you allocate your attention, because that is the ultimate currency. Like what you do spending your time, which is finite, is like the ultimate currency you can spend. I often like love the quote of like, you are a time billionaire, and that's the most important billion of your life. So that's just like the general meta in the world. And like the decentralized kind of promise is, if we have the ability for people to kind of opt into various places in which they give their attention, they can kind of build their own communities that don't have the restrictions that, like, you know, the walled gardens kind of enforce on us. Obviously in finance, but also when it comes to social and stuff. So when we're thinking about it in that light, like, okay, blockchains are cities / communities in a way that allow people to opt into the community in which they want to, and can move in and out without losing their identity, essentially. For a community to exist, like if we were to build something like that, it's nothing without culture. It's absolutely nothing without art. Like, it's just like the most important thing that has like told the human story throughout history, throughout millennia, is art. We look at cave drawings, we look at, like, you know, old kind of paintings, etc. Those are all the best ways for us to recollect history. The beauty of chains is that, like, it's kind of history that you put on that cannot be wiped, right? It's immutable, it's there forever. So it's a beautiful way to kind of like, one, tell the human story. So we believe in that as like a general future of the world, where like all stories should be kind of spoken about and like be able to be shared immutably. And then two is just kind of the idea that if we are to build this community, what is a community without its artists? What is a community without like joy in it, right? Like, it's not just like ones and zeros and binary like kind of system there. It's like much broader. If I'm building a city, I want to walk around, I want to see parks, I want to listen to music, I want to be able to like enjoy it and actually make that place like home. So we believe, like, as we kind of build this, we need more artists, and we want more artists to feel like part of the collective. And where the OP kind of comes into play is like, Optimism is a governance token, which kind of allows you to enter the Optimism collective and kind of like start speaking for your community, right? Like, it's like, we do have grant systems, we have like governance proposals and the like. As such, artists, through We Love the Art and through like just the general attention that it brought about in the creator community, we hope feel enabled to kind of go onto these forums, gov.optimism.io, pitch in their kind of requests of like what they believe is needed, kind of share and socialize that, and eventually be able to create a funding model for themselves outside of like necessarily needing like a central party to do it. Like, obviously in this case, like Optimism Unlimited, like, we kind of help push out We Love the Art with all of our partners, but we definitely want to end up in a world where we can listen to creatives and enable them to push out campaigns of their own. Because I'll be the first person to say, I think like someone who is a creative, who's dedicated their entire life to being a creative and helping creatives in general, is much better positioned to take this to the next frontier than I am, right? Like, I'm here to enable and support, but I'm very, very excited to see like, how can we do that in the best way possible to build this community and to bring the world on chain in a way that helps everybody. Yeah.
I also admire kind of how that was handled, because when there's always this unfortunately this bias because of how the art world has behaved and how big tech has behaved, that you see just disproportionate funding going to a certain demographic, right? But I was really impressed when I looked at where the funds had gone with something like We Heart the Art. That diversity is something that is really something that you're conscious of. Can I ask, like, where is that rooted? Is this something that has been a part of the conversation in your work prior to working with OP, or is there other leadership figures involved in these decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just general belief, and I think like personally, I feel very strongly about that based on my own background and also just generally my broad thesis of crypto personally. But like across the board, like, this is something that we unanimously agree as a superchain that like this is a global force, and as such, it should represent global people. One of the biggest powers of like blockchain systems is value can be created in and spread towards pockets that previously were ignored. You don't have to be in like the best kind of geographical location to be a successful artist. Like that's inherently like gatekeeping geofences and has like probably not allowed us to access so much beautiful things that are available. And I think blockchain's kind of really become the great equalizer there, where it's very much like it has the potential to be a very strong meritocracy. It has a long way to go to be that. I'll be the first to say that. It's like, I think if we want to reach the pure, full, abundant meritocratic society that like blockchains can provide, where like doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter who you are, if you're creating things, if you're like it can be spread and can be like appreciated by anyone anywhere in the world. And I think the way we do that is by bringing the world more on chain, where like because like blockchains are transparent entities, you can have reputation baked in, you can have attribution baked in to all these interactions, and as such, it just opens and levels the global playing field. I'm very, very excited to see that. It's part of why like I personally believe very strongly in working at scaling blockchains, because like the more stuff we can bring on chain, the more problems we'll be able to solve. I often say that a lot of the problems in crypto, ironically, can be solved by more crypto. For example, like the FTX fiasco, or like all of this stuff was happening behind the scenes. The solution to that is just to bring everything on chain.
Yeah.
Then it's transparent. So long way to go, but yeah, definitely in terms of the global aspect and in terms of like this being diverse, like the unique ability that crypto has is the ability to create global value and connect people across the board with that value. And I think that's something that we definitely treasure and like want to make sure that we're voicing out as best we can.
I was at FarCon last month, and I heard Dan talk about, how the need to create more cozy corners and build more Legos. And I just love that analogy. And I think, it's so crucial what you shared about, building with culture in mind, because that's really what's going to attract the next billion users. With the focus perhaps being less on art with this round of retro, where do you see kind of that cultural well, first of all, tell people what retro funding is, because I think that's really important for those who are non-OP and kind of Superchain maxis. Tell people what that is, and then perhaps talk a little bit about your long-term view of like building culture for OP.
Yeah. Okay, so retro PGF and retro funding in general. The best way to explain this is that a lot of funding models in the world have been mirrored in issues, right? We see a lot of money go into various different places, and then at the end, it's like, where did it go? Like, was it actually useful? Who knows? Retro funding allows you to retroactively reward impact after initial parts have happened. So it kind of allows us to make sure that like when we do fund the right people within the sets and bounds that we like have prescribed as a collective broadly. So as such, retro funding is recurring rounds that Optimism Collective runs, where there's various themes to these rounds, and we basically make a call out to builders saying, hey, this is the theme for the round. Apply if you think this is a fit for what you've done. And the collective kind of votes on who gets retro funded. That's basically like the rounds that we do. There's 800 million OP dedicated towards retro funding, as well as sequencer fees that Optimism collects. So if you're paying gas on OP Midnet, the profits from that like sequencer go into retro funding. If you're paying gas on other Superchain networks, 15% of that goes into retro funding. So you're kind of like, as a user, you're almost contributing to this broader thing. Themes vary. So, some themes may be on the OP stack side to help like open source developers to keep building what they're building without having to like gate and like walled garden it. It could also be like for people who contribute to the sequencer as a retroactive reward for that. It could be for artists. These are different themes that we'll iteratively be able to continue working on. So that's on like retro PGF. The idea of culture is outside of retro PGF, doing things like We Love the Art, partnering with teams to basically figure out what the best way to do that is like a big part of this, where it is an open system. Like as such, culture grows best when you like just like have a place for it to grow and then have adequate soil and adequate kind of water essentially. But ultimately, like it will grow itself. Like I think like forcing culture to grow comes off a little weird. But instead, like enabling culture to grow is like the main goal here. As such, I think the governance system is the most fascinating part of this, where like there is this open gov.optimism.io system. People can join the collective. You can delegate OP. People can voice, like even if you don't have like funds to delegate right now, you can still kind of be a part of this. Your voice is still heard. And as such, kind of allow opening it up where optimism is seen as an enablement engine for culture versus like, prescribing kind of top-down culture in any way. That's kind of how we think about cultural growth. I think there's a lot of initiatives happening across the Superchain for that. We love the art, on-chain summer, all of these things kind of come into play of like, how do we build that culture broadly? And we're always open to ideas. The main thing is like, how can we take an idea into action? And the best way we see that is through something like a open governance forum, where people can come in and collaborate together.
Amazing. Let's talk about Farcaster. Like, how has Farcaster's integration with OP been a success? Like, what do you think the reasons behind that are? And can you maybe share a little more about the collaboration and perhaps how it benefits both platforms or protocols?
So technically, when you create an account on Farcaster, it's on OP mainnet. So your account creation, the fee that you pay, et cetera, to sign up, that's an account that's created on OP mainnet. The power of Farcaster, and that's on the Farcaster protocol. And then there's Warpcaster, which is like a front end through which you can access that.
Always confuses people who are non-Web3 people, but yes.
Yeah, the best way I'd kind of explain it is, so right now, like we use Twitter, we use Instagram a lot. If, let's say like Mark Zuckerberg decides that Instagram's next update will have every single thing in the most like eye-shattering, like bright green color possible, like where you can't even look at it. You like look at it and you're like, oh, my eyes hurt. And let's say Mark Zuckerberg is like, okay, we're gonna push this update. They push that update. You have no choice but to use that. Like you have all your friends on Instagram, you have like your whole like network there, same with Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever. But you have no choice but to be like, okay, they top down, they kind of set this, and this is what's gonna happen. Farcaster is separate in the sense that like in Farcaster, same scenario, let's just use Instagram. Let's say like that upgrade does happen and you hate it and you're like, I don't want to use this. You can have 10 other options of different front-end interfaces for Instagram, which you can use instead. So that's kind of like what Farcaster enables, where like there is your account, there's all your friends in this account, there's Warpcaster in which you access it. But if you don't like some of the things Warpcaster is doing, there's other clients that may be better for you. For example, right now Warpcast doesn't support threads, but Nook, which is another client, does. So I use Nook when I want to put out a thread. I can move around. Like Dracula is one as well. That's like essentially a TikTok version of Farcaster. So it allows for all these front ends and differentiated experiences without fragmenting the user. I'm not creating a new account every time. It's the same account. All my friends are still on there. I'm just accessing it through a different interface. That has been very awesome to see. I definitely see the emergence of Farcaster as being a front end for blockchains. I think like the whole blockchain experience is very tricky right now. If like, there's like 5 tabs open, I'm switching all this stuff. It's kind of crazy. Farcaster brings in one place. Like I can make friends, I can discover, I can make on-chain actions, I can like share on-chain actions. I can go look at memes and then go into like a DEX trading thing, like in like span of seconds on my phone.
Right.
And I think that entire process is very powerful. I think it's beneficial for the Superchain because when developers build on the Superchain, they have this on day one. They have the ability to kind of like launch frames and the like, and they have this ever-growing DAU of users. Now, Farcaster is agnostic on like blockchains. They are integrating across the board. I think that's very healthy. I think like it almost becomes a unifier at the front end level for the crypto experience, which is what I think we need. I think users and developers alike have been fragmented in the past. A big part of the Superchain is like, let's not do this. Let's expand the pie together. There's enough of like potential here. And it's really, really nice to kind of see a team like Farcaster do that at the front end level when it comes to users.
Amazing. What is exciting to you right now? Is there anything that you're seeing being built that you're really thrilled about and excited?
Yeah, I think what I am very thrilled about is the idea that, so like just some historical context, like when I joined Optimism, we had just about like launch mainnet and like more apps. There was like 15 apps on there, and these like smaller apps and like 1 or 2 NFT collections at the time. And we really had to go and we really had to be like, hey, like, let's get apps to deploy here. That was part of my job. I was speaking to a lot of these teams. And what I'm seeing now is just like much less need for that. Like when these new chain ecosystems emerge, it's much less about thinking about all these like minute details and more so thinking about what is a fun experience that I can give to a user that's unique. when I launch a chain, like what are apps that I can build on here and the culture I can build on here that's unique. And I think that kind of lends its way into art as well, where I think the artist community feels like chains, which have been giving out massive grants all across the board, like DeFi to this to that, has not kind of been approaching the artist in itself. And I think part of it is rooted in just like chains not being ecosystem ready on the dependency side to focus enough on like community and growth on the GTM side and like building culture generally. That I think with the OP stack, with the Superchain, a lot of these chains are just starting off already with all those things. These things took us months to kind of get back in the day, like years even sometimes. And now teams are getting them on day one, which means more and more minds working on this stuff, more and more minds able to build culture and community. I'm speaking to a bunch of teams that are launching and they're like, hey, if you want to do like a commemorative NFT for this thing, do you have an artist you can link us to? And I'm seeing that demand more and more. So it's very, very exciting to see that emerge. I think we'll see more fun apps on chain as well. Specifically on the product side, I'm very excited for smart accounts. I think basically we will need to make sure that people can onboard into crypto and minimize the number of clicks it takes for them to do it. And a lot of the 437 work that's been done by multiple like teams for almost like 2 years now in silence are hitting like escape velocity in the form of user experiences, where I imagine like the next wave of crypto, okay, this like in the next 6 months, will all go on chain immediately. It's not going to be like, oh, crypto's alive again. Let me go on this thing. And what do I see? I see like this dog thing and I see this other thing. I'm just going to click buy and then I close my eyes and see. Like now it's actually, wait, crypto's come back. Like, let's see what's happening. Oh, I can buy this song or like mint this song. Oh, I can join this decentralized social thing. Wait, I can do this prediction market. Oh, I could like be a part of this community. It just like opens that door up a ton. And I think we're like just there. It's really exciting.
I think so too. And I always think about something that Keith Grossman, who is president of MoonPay, shared. It was, I think, like a couple of years ago at one of the Christie's Art and Tech conferences. Mm-hmm. He said, you know, until my Jewish 80-year-old mother can buy crypto with 2 clicks, mm-hmm. we still have friction and we still have a long way to go. Yeah. And so I think there's 2 things at play here. I think it's the friction piece that we are not quite have not quite solved yet, and it's also the why. Like there has to be a compelling reason for somebody to use crypto. And one of the things I've been working on with my kind of team in the background is we're building a time capsule. We're building it all on Base. We're building this idea that folks can, you know, preserve moments, important moments from their day or from, you know, monumental moments from their year, and actually preserve them on chain. So we're trying to kind of build that idea that there's a reason for this. It's preservation. Like, you know, having your memories stored in something like Facebook, they own your data, they own you. Whereas if you put this on chain, you have that self-sovereignty. What do you think we need to get closer to that? Really giving people a compelling reason as to why they should put something on chain and eliminating that friction.
Starting with the why, I think, is where we're at. Like, I think that's where we're headed. I think so much of chain speak has been, and I come from the protocol side, so like obviously I have my bias there. It was like so much of chain speak has been about the how. Like this thing will have this scaling tech term, insert buzzword here. So like, yeah, right. Like it's like when we actually look at it and we look back all the way. I have this article I'd love to share called "Building Contributor Highways." But like part of this article, I mentioned how this whole thing started with the why. Satoshi came in 2008, posted a forum post and he kind of like put this thing out, or he or she put this thing up that was basically about like this idea, and people believed in it. People were like, wait, that's needed. Why is it needed? 2008 finance collapse, etc. Like, I'm going to go in. People contributed and they built the thing and it ended up happening. I think since then we've kind of moved into like the how a lot more of like how, scale. But we needed that. I mean, we're at the how. Like, I think we've got a decent amount of how is here. Like there are fun experiences on chain. I can use PWAs, I can go on mobile. It's like I have my friends who are using crypto for the first time. People are liking the communities that are like Hire, for example, is like it's a cool community, you know, regardless of if you're in or out of crypto. And I think we can really stress on the why, really start with like asking the world and telling the world like, hey, there is a need for you. In this case, like everyone wants to preserve a memory. Everyone wants to be able to like have a legacy, have the memory live on, not be like kind of like prone to being shut down from some like issue with a server or something. And I think all of that kind of plays in. And the user experiences are going to be so good that like people may not even know that it's a blockchain, but they know that it's going to live forever. And I think part of that is like the emotional dialogue. Like I think what you're doing with the show is incredible. Like this is exactly what we need, where like hopefully viewers like from this chatter like can walk away with an insight on like something, or like some sort of a why that like myself and your guests who've been building in the space as well like have, and what drives us. So at the end of the day, like everything else kind of is like a very binary thing, like upgrade this, upgrade that. But the main thing that gets us all to say is like the belief that this is a system and that why, and finding that why and being able to spread that is the key for the space. And we can only do that through art. So that's kind of comes back full circle into like
culture has to be at the heart and center of this whole ecosystem. So, you know, there's also another quote that was shared by Keith, and that was, the future is not built by pessimists. The future is built by optimists. And I think that is just, I mean, it's so fitting with what you guys are doing. And, you know, there's a reason that we chose at the Good News Show to lean into the Superchain, is because of that optimism, the you know, progressive mindset and the innovation that's happening at every level with what you're building. So we are here for it, and we're going to be hopefully taking part in On-Chain Summer. We're definitely here to build. And I think there's a lot of folks that listen to this show that are just amazing creators who are now starting to see, kind of cut through the noise of all the other things that are in front of them on a daily basis, all the other chains, and see, you know, something really solid here and a really supportive community that can help get them to where they need to be. So Benji, thank you for joining us. Any final thoughts or calls to action that you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I'd love to share an article, and if there's like room for feedback on it.
Yes.
I'll share that after on Twitter with you. And then I think one thing that I just want to end with is like, our philosophy is like, okay, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast and far, build a super chain. And like, that's kind of like part of the thesis here, where I think so many advancements are happening. One thing for anyone in the audience who's kind of interested in learning more, this is your chain. This is your ecosystem as much as it's anyone else's. It is an open space. gov.optimism.io is a great way to kind of make a start into figuring out how can I contribute to the collective? What is retro funding? What are things? What is the collective looking for? How can my voice and my opinions be heard? Those are all things we're always looking for feedback as a broader collective, and all of this is very transparent and done openly. So definitely recommend anyone who's interested dive into that. And also mirror posts, especially if you go back like a few posts, you'll see a lot about the vision of optimism as well, which I think is unique and beautiful, and kind of what pulled me into it. I'm really, really happy to be able to kind of speak about it here and hear everyone else kind of really resonate as well.
Amazing. Well, folks, go give Benji a follow. He is leading the charge for all things OP. And that is it. That's a wrap. That is episode 7 of our Superchain Spotlight. Thank you, Benji, and thanks to everybody who tuned in.
Thank you all.